Hello everybody, my name is Karryshh and welcome back to another recap video. This time it's our latest Indonesian horror movie, Jurnal Risa by Risa Saraswati. The movie is actually a mockumentary, which is kinda like a fake documentary, and the story is basic Indonesian style with lots of voodoo and black magic. If you like Indonesian horror, you can give it a try, but watch this video till end and decide by yourself if you do wanna watch it or not. On top of that, if you're new here, so I humbly request you to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. It's the only thing that makes me wanna bring more of these videos. And with that said, let's dive into the story of Jurnal Risa. So this story kicks off by talking about supernatural creatures. According to the narrator, demons only bother people who actually believe in them. Basically, the more we fear something, the more it has the power to scare us. Then we're told about a documentary made 2 years ago on supernatural beings, and we get introduced to a YouTube channel called Jurnal Risa, run by Risa Saraswati, a woman who has the ability to see ghosts. Risa's channel is pretty famous, and then there's an interview with her. She explains that while some people believe in what she does, others don't, but she doesn't care either way. She listens to spirits' stories, tries to understand them, and then writes books about them. During the interview, Risa mentions a demonic entity whose name she accidentally said on a podcast in the past, and since then, the name has spread worldwide, and Risa is worried that this entity might harm someone. Now, during the shoot of this documentary, Risa and her team head to a local haunted site for an investigation. We're introduced to the team, which includes Rimasta, Nico, Indi, Kakang, Riri, and Farul. They also have 2 masters who can perform exorcism, and their names were Anga and Jeffrey, and 3 participants from nearby areas who joined Risa's video for today, and they were Adi, Feli, and Prinsa. Before they start the investigation, everyone says a prayer, and then they begin interviewing each of the participants, and we find out that Prinsa is mainly there to gain some popularity. Then it starts raining, so they have to go inside, and the investigation kicks off at night. They split into 3 teams and wander around the place. Pretty soon, they start sensing a presence, but there's definitely more than one entity there with them. Risa starts explaining that the entities in this place are incredibly powerful. One of the spirits actually possesses her. Risa then starts growling in a really unsettling way, but Jeffrey quickly performs a small exorcism and brings her back to normal. The scene moves forward, and now the participants are left alone inside the building, while the team monitors them through cameras. This is part of the documentary, and it was actually a courage test. During this test, Prinsa pulls out her phone and starts wandering around, while in the background we see a shadowy figure following Feli. A little later, Prinsa begins singing this creepy song that freaks out Ardi and Feli, but soon us viewers realize that Prinsa had stopped singing a while ago, so who or what was making that sound? Then Prinsa starts saying the name Samex repeatedly. Hearing this, Risa gets terrified because Samex is the name of the demonic entity Risa accidentally mentioned in her past podcast. Prinsa keeps saying the name louder and louder, and behind her, we can see a horrifying figure appear. Suddenly, Prinsa starts feeling dizzy, and the entity grabs her by the waist. Prinsa obviously tries to run away, but the entity possesses her in the next moment. Jeffrey and Anga rush in to perform an exorcism and successfully drive the entity out of her. And after this, the entire team decides to shut down the shoot and pack up before things get worse, so everyone heads home. The next day, Risa and her team review the footage of Prinsa, and Risa warns everyone never to say the name Samex again. Meanwhile, the video of Prinsa goes viral online, and she becomes famous, achieving what she wanted. But Risa starts to suspect that the entity might still be inside Prinsa. The scene shifts to Prinsa, whose life seems totally normal as she enjoys her newfound fame. But then, through Risa's insight, we learn that Samex is an entity that originates from a village where Risa used to live as a child. Turns out, Samix is actually a nickname and the entity's real name is something else. According to Risa, if the entity doesn't leave Prince's body within 5 days, Prince will die. And now suddenly, while Risa is driving, there's a loud thud in the car, even though no one else was sitting on the back seat. After this, Anga and Indy visit Prince's house to talk to her, where we also meet Prince's brother, Bayu. Once they settle in, Anga and Indy explain that the entity might still be inside Prinsa. Anga suggests performing another cleansing to drive the entity out, and Prinsa agrees. But during this small ritual, she suddenly gets up in a creepy way and walks out of the room. Indy follows Prinsa, but instead of finding her, Indy sees Riri, who wasn't even supposed to be in the house. When Indy approaches Riri, she vanishes and an invisible force grabs Indy's arm and she gets scared to hell. Anga steps in and saves Indy, but soon after that, a strange handprint appears on Indy's arm. Right then, a door in the house opens and inside the room, they find Prinsa sitting quietly. Bayu tries talking to his sister, but she doesn't respond, making it clear that she's still possessed. Later, Indy reveals that Samix's real name is Uwa Satira, an entity capable of taking other people's appearances, just like it did with Riri earlier. Now the Jurnal Risa team decides to set up cameras all over Prince's house to monitor her closely, and they end up staying there to keep an eye on everything. The first night in the house, some paranormal stuff goes down. A door creaks open on its own, and an entity covered in a white sheet walks out. The team notices it, and this thing starts wandering around the living room in the creepiest way possible. Then suddenly it sits down and another entity curves inside the same sheet. When the team finally works up the nerve to pull the sheet off, there was no one underneath, which obviously shake everyone to their cores. Suddenly, Prince appears in the room and she was completely confused how she even got there. The next day, Prinsa is invited to appear on a famous podcast and it was like a dream come true for her. But as the podcast was going on, Jurnal Risa team finds out that she freaked out during the podcast and started screaming out of nowhere. Now when Prinsa gets home, she just sits there in silence, not saying a word, and the team tells her that she needs another exorcism. But this time, Prinsa snaps. She gets angry and refuses, saying that she's done with all this. Later that night, around 2 a.m., more paranormal stuff starts happening. Prinsa, who was now clearly possessed, begins walking around the house. She picks up a knife and goes to sit near the documentary team, playing with the knife in this unsettling way. And the next morning, Prinsa disappeared. The whole team starts searching for her and they discover footages on the camera from the previous night. Everyone is shocked to see Prinsa with the knife, and then Bayu gets a call from a photo shoot company. Apparently, Prinsa had a photo shoot scheduled for that day, but they informed Bayu that Prinsa showed up at the studio a night before. The team immediately rushes to the studio and they find Prinsa unconscious, and when she wakes up, she has no memory of how she ended up there. That day, Risa watches the footage of Prinsa from the night before and she was absolutely terrified. She then decides that it's time to share a story, and we learn that Uwa Satira was actually a real person, a friend of Risa's grandmother. Satira didn't believe in God and she rejected anything related to faith. Then one day, she died, but after her death, her spirit began tormenting Risa's family. Risa's grandfather and father eventually performed a ritual that banished Satira's spirit. However, after that, her name was changed to Samix, and when Prinsa mentioned the name during the investigation, it awakened Satira's spirit, which then possessed Prinsa. Now, as Risa was telling this story, she sees her son playing in the garden, but moments later, her husband walks in with their real son, and the child in the garden vanishes. It was actually Satira who has taken the form of her son. That night, Risa is about to start praying, and her husband is filming her when they realize their son again has disappeared from beside him. Panicking, they start looking for him when suddenly they hear static from a small radio, and then they see a footage of their son on his bed, but on the bedside table, they see Satira's demonic spirits sitting there staring at him. Obviously, they rush to save their son and he was okay, but he suddenly comes down with a high fever and they had to admit him to a hospital. The scene then shifts to Bayu, who gives Prinsa a prayer outfit and tells her that she needs to pray. However, Prinsa refuses to take it. At that moment, Satira possesses her again. She tells Bayu that you can go to heaven all by yourself, but I'll be stayed in a giant rice field. She then laughs demonically and Bayu is left frozen in fear. After a while, Prinsa seems to return to normal and she starts recording a video of herself where she talks about how her body feels weaker every day and how she can remember anything from the time she's possessed. Later, Indy comes in to see her and the two chat for a bit, comforting each other. But then, Prinsa starts saying weird things and she said to Indy that a long time ago, I had many friends, but one by one, they all died and suddenly her eyes turned completely white. Prinsa then stands up and freaks Indy out and Indy tries to run, but all the lights in the house suddenly go out and Prinsa disappears. Indy uses her phone's flashlight to search for her, but then evil Prinsa suddenly attacks her. Indy pushes her away and ran for her life, but the door to the room was locked and Prinsa was slowly approaching. Indy was terrified, frozen in fear, but then Prinsa vanishes again and Indy has no idea what she should do. Suddenly we saw Prinsa crawling up to the walls and then onto the ceiling, and out of nowhere, she jumps down and attacks on Indy. Right at that moment, the rest of the team bursts into the room and saves Indy, but Prinsa was fully possessed now, and Bayu and the others managed to grab her and try to calm her down, but things were getting worse. So they have to call a high-ranking shaman to do something. When the shaman arrives, he starts sprinkling holy water throughout the house and others brings Prinsa to him. The shaman asks the spirit why it's disturbing Prinsa, but the spirit replies, I'm not disturbing her, she's the one who called me and now I'm not leaving her. From this point, the spirit's anger only grows upwards. And when the shaman pours holy water on Prinsa, she becomes even more aggressive. She shoves everyone away and grabs a knife before climbing onto a table. However, the shaman refuses to back away, but Prinsa leaps at him and attacks. The others try to restrain her, and finally Risa steps forward and she tells the spirit of Satira that please let this girl go and take me instead if you have to. But the spirit doesn't seem to listen to anyone. In the end, the shaman successfully performs a ritual and calms Satira's spirit, bringing Prinsa back to consciousness. But it's clear that the spirit won't rest until Prinsa is dead. The shaman tells the group that they need to take Prinsa to the village where Satira used to live, cause the villagers there were the ones who originally gave Satira the name Samix, so they might be the only ones who might be able to help Prinsa. Now the next day, without wasting any time, Prinsa is taken to the village, but not the entire team goes with her. The ones who go are Bayu, Anga, Indy, and Jeffrey. But on the way, Satira realizes they've taken her back home. Now after reaching a certain point, they all had to continue on foot. So they start walking and cross a bridge where they encounter villagers carrying an empty stretcher which is usually used to lay bodies on. From the expression of villagers, it was clear that they don't like outsiders, especially city folks. A little later, when the group enters the village, all the locals stare at him in a hostile way. Suddenly, they start throwing stones at him and tell him to go back home. But then Anga yells out that they need to meet the village chief. That's when the chief, a woman, steps forward As soon as she hears the name of Risa's family, she tells the villager to stop attacking and calm down, and then the chief leads them into the village, which is steeped in superstition and rituals. It's obvious that the people here believe deeply in magic and supernatural. The chief then explains that lately, villagers have been dying mysteriously, and to protect themselves, they've been performing daily rituals to keep an entity from killing more people. And the entity was actually Satira's spirit. This means that since Satira's spirit is awakened, she's been killing people in this village as well, even while staying in the city. The chief takes the group to Satira's old house, and as they reach it, Satira, who has now taken full control of Prinsa, becomes ecstatic. Possessed Prinsa starts laughing as she sits proudly outside on the porch of her old house and begins to revel in her return. The chief and her partner, Arja, cleanse Satira's house since the group will be staying there, and a little later, the village shaman arrives to check on Prinsa. As soon as he looks at her, he says that this girl has been possessed for 5 days, and tonight Satira is going to kill her. The shaman then brings out a chair and make Prinsa sit down. He then says to her, 100 corpses, 200 corpses, and 300 corpses. And hearing this, Prinsa starts laughing, cause it's probably a catchphrase Satira used a lot in her past. The shaman then explains to everyone that Samex isn't just Satira's name, it's actually a title the villagers give to supernatural entities. So basically it means if someone in the village dies mysteriously and their spirit becomes demonic, they are labeled as a Samex. After this, Prinsa is taken inside Satira's house accompanied by Anga and the village chief. Satira in Prinsa's body was actually really thrilled to be back in her home, but no one tells her what's about to happen in the village. Meanwhile, outside the village, the shaman begins preparing for a ritual that will take place tonight. The shaman explains that during the ritual, the gateway of the spirit world will open, allowing Satira's spirit to leave. However, this will also allow many Samic spirits to enter human world, and they will try to possess people. That's why the villagers are inscribing chants and protective symbols around their homes to keep the demonic entities away. As the night falls, Prinsa starts feeling hot and begins muttering random stuff. Bayu tries to comfort her, and for a moment, Prinsa becomes conscious and she obviously starts crying because she has no idea what was happening around her. But suddenly, Satira takes over again, and then possessed Prinsa says, "Tonight I'm going to eat a newborn baby." Right then, the lights go out, and when they turn on the flashlight, Prinsa was gone. Bayu immediately started searching for his sister, and the camera captures glimpses of demonic Satira. Both the person holding the camera and Bayu heads outside to look for Prinsa, but suddenly Bayu and the cameraman are teleported back inside the house. But now the lamps are lit and the gate is locked shut. Sinister noises echo from every corner, and then right in front of the cameraman, Bayu disappears too. Inside the house, creepy things starts happening one after another, and at one point leaves begin swirling on their own, and the cameraman finds Satira sitting in a corner. The cameraman freaks out and runs away, but Satira jumps directly in front of him, giving us a creepy jump scare. Now while running, the cameraman finds Bayu, but he was in terrible shape. They both desperately tried to search for a way out, and luckily, the main door opens by itself. However, just as Bayu is about to step outside, the gate slams shut, crushing his fingers badly. Meanwhile, outside, the villagers finish preparing for the ritual, when suddenly a woman runs out, crying that her newborn baby has been taken by Satira. That's when Bayu stumbles out of the house with his mangled fingers, and the villagers try to help him, but soon Bayu reveals that Prinsa has escaped from the house, and everyone suspects that she might be the one who took the baby. The village chief and the shaman immediately order everyone to spread out and search for Prinsa. The entire village begins looking for her, and they eventually find her in a rice field. She was standing there holding the baby upside down, and it was clear that she was about to kill and eat the baby. But the villagers managed to stop her just in time. They grab Prinsa and force her into a chair, and then they cover her with a cloth to keep her restrained for the time being. After a while, when Prinsa calmed down, the ritual finally begins. The village chief pours holy water over Prinsa, which obviously doesn't sit well with her. She starts hurting herself, smashing her head, but Indy and others hold her down to stop her. The villagers then escort the documentary team out of the ritual space, and they lock up the team in a small jail. Indy, Jeffrey, and Bayou and Enga were told not to leave this place no matter what happens during the ritual, and the reason to put them in this jail was actually to protect them from any harm. The ritual continues with the villagers playing creepy music, and everyone locks their doors at home. Prinsa is then strapped into a weird chair, almost like a small cage, while everyone gathers around her and starts chanting mantras. The shaman strikes Prinsa, telling Satira to leave her body, but Satira just laughs in a creepy way and says that she doesn't want to let the girl go because her heart is black as night. After this, in the ritual, a lock of Prinsa's hair is cut off, and the ritual from here grows more intense. Everything gets so overwhelming that even the villagers who are participating starts to feel dizzy. Prinsa then suddenly lets out a loud scream, and in an instant, she flips everyone in the village upside down. Chaos breaks out and everyone starts vomiting, and during this chaos, Prinsa bites off a man's ear. She then jumps on the shaman's leg, but since she was tied up, she can't do much else. 4 or 5 villagers grab her and she is brought in front of a goat. The goat was then sacrificed in front of her so that Satira's spirit might accept it as an offering and leave Prinsa's body. Prinsa is then made to drink the goat's blood, and as soon as she tastes it, she snaps back to her normal senses. Now when Prinsa wakes up, she was obviously freaked out, but the villagers didn't let her go just yet, cause in the next moment, evil Satira takes over her body again. The shaman holds Prinsa's head and casts a certain spell, while the village chief pours more of that goat's blood on her head, completely turning Prinsa into a demonic-looking being. Now from the jail, her brother can't bear to see this, so he escapes the jail and others follow him. But just then, a girl named Nati steps out of her house. Now Nati walks up to the ritual site and she says, "Do you have any babies? Newborn babies? If you do, can I eat them?" Hearing this, everyone realizes that Nati has also been possessed by Satira. And suddenly, Nati runs off and she climbs onto a house's roof and jumps off, committing unalivement. Her body shatters and her bones break. But strangely, the villagers were not shocked. They take her body and place it on a platform, and her eyes then turns white. And this is where we find another truth about this ritual. It turns out that to cast an evil spirit away in this village, an animal sacrifice is offered. But if the Samex refuses the sacrifice, the ancestors of this village, in other words, some holy spirits, choose a random person for the sacrifice. This is why Nati's sacrifice happened automatically. This actually ensures that the ritual doesn't fail, because if it does, the evil spirit will kill everyone else. So to save many lives, the holy spirits of the village sacrifice one person. Now that Nati's sacrifice has been made, Satira's spirit has to leave Prinsa's body. Watching Nati's death, Satira seems pleased, but suddenly all the lamps, torches, and fires go out by themselves. The documentary crew was left horrified, because not just the light, but the entire village becomes silent. Now when they light their torches, their hearts drop to the ground because they realize all the villagers, including Prinsa, have vanished into thin air. The whole team was frozen in fear, but then Anga remembers something important. The shaman had said that at the end of the ritual, the door to the spirit world would open and Satira's spirit will return there, but many other spirits would enter our world, and that's probably what's happening right now. Our world and the spirit world have merged, And that's why the documentary team can't see anyone. Maybe this was the reason they shouldn't have left the jail in the first place. Now the team doesn't know what they should do in this situation, so they split into two groups and start searching for Prinsa in the empty village. But for a long time they find nothing. Then suddenly they hear the sound of children playing, but these weren't kids. They were the evil spirits looking for human bodies, and terrified, Anga, Bayu and Inti hide. After a while, the three of them catch a glimpse of Prinsa. She was standing with other evil spirits. Then suddenly, Prinsa ran away into the darkness and the group follows her into the jungle, where she vanishes again. But then they spot the chair she was tied to during the ritual, and they also hear the villagers chanting spells, but the sound were really creepy and they couldn't see anyone as well. Now when they get close to the chair, suddenly all the villagers appear, but their forms were evil, and instead of Prinsa, Satira was sitting there. The whole atmosphere turns red as well, and that's when they realize that they've crossed into the spirit world, a place where everything is strange and terrifying. The scene was super creepy as well, cause they were seeing normal humans in the spirit world. The team gets so scared that they ran out of the jungle back into the real world. And luckily they find Princess sitting by a tree, and her eyes were normal again, as if she's really finally okay. Now the team instantly take Princess back to the ritual spot where all the villagers had returned, but they were standing completely like statues. The reason for this was that the villagers' souls were still in the spirit world, where they were trying to figure out Satira's spirit. Basically, this ritual was actually next level intense. After this, the team didn't know what to do next, so they sat Prinsa back down in the chair, and suddenly all the villagers came back to life. The shaman's ritual grew even more intense, and finally Satira's spirit came out of Prinsa's mouth in the form of a black slimy substance. The shaman took the substance and shoved it into Nati's mouth. Then the village chief appears and tells the team that Prinsa is fine now, so they should take her back to the city. But the ritual wasn't finished yet. The chief says the rest of the work is private and the team can't film it. So the team has to leave with Prinsa while the villagers continue their ritual. The scene shifts to the next day where Prinsa is back home and completely fine now. Risa is finally able to finish the documentary for her channel and tells everyone that this case was the most dangerous one of her life. A few days later, Prinsa is perfectly fine as she does an interview explaining how one mistake of hers affected so many people. She tells the entire internet that these supernatural creatures are real and we shouldn't mess with things we don't understand. And then the movie ends. Now during the end credit scenes, we're shown some real-life cases from Risa's actual YouTube channel, Jurnal Risa, where she explores haunted places. You can go check out their channel right now and watch all their investigations, cause all the credits goes to them. So this was the recap video on the movie Jurnal Risa, and I hope you have liked this one. If you have, then please subscribe the channel and give this video a thumbs up. I really need your support to grow further. If you wanna watch this movie, there's a link to my Telegram channel in the description box. If that link does not work, just go to Telegram and put my channel's name in the search bar. How and when you can find it on Telegram will be revealed on the channel, so go join that. I'm mostly active on Insta, so you can follow me there as well. And look into my other channels where we discuss about the mysteries of the world. All the links are in the description box. For now, I see you all in the next one. Till then, stay awake, cause they always see you.